You're watching the Maryland Players Show. Okay, my special guest today, all-time leading scorer in Fayetteville Manlius High in New York. Played for Syracuse University from 86 to 89. During those 3 years, the all-time career three-point leader at 43.3%. In his junior season at Syracuse, 47% from the three-point line, which is #1 all-time single season as well. Transferred to the University of Maryland in his senior year, played in the 1990-91 season, where he scored 497 points that season. That's good for top 50. 18 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 80% from the free throw line. Man, I needed that. I needed those numbers, man, 80%. Played professionally in Europe and the CBA. For you youngsters, the CBA, that'll be the G League for you guys nowadays. From 91 to 97. An assistant coach as well at Fairfield University from 98 to 2001. Welcome to the show, my guy, Matt Roe. What's going on, Matt?
Well, thank you so much for having me on this. I watch all your podcasts on our thread we have with former Maryland players, but
Yes.
Very honored. And you welcomed me on the show with the greatest welcome ever, like you did when I left Syracuse to come down to College Park in 1989. I'm forever indebted for you and all the other Maryland players for doing that.
No doubt, man. So Matt, you're from New York, right? So where did your love for basketball come from, man? Did you grow up playing pickup games and that's how it happened? Or how did that love develop?
Well, it's interesting. Great question. Growing up, I played 4 sports, probably like you growing up 2 or 3 at least, right? I played football as a quarterback. I hated, I'm just chilled to the bone watching like Green Bay this week in the playoffs. I hated getting hit. Winters were cold. In upstate New York, I used to roll out. And if I wasn't throwing it, if no one was open, I was chucking it out of bounds. I was never.
You weren't one of those running quarterbacks, man?
No. Like Cam Newton and those guys, and they amaze me how they can just continually run and get hit. But I hated the cold, winters of upstate New York. And then I played baseball as a shortstop. You can't really play pickup baseball in the sandlot unless your father or friends throw into you. And I love tennis. Tennis was another sport, but basketball in upstate New York, you can play it year round. We used to sneak into gyms, but the biggest thing where I caught love of basketball was obviously, in the early '80s, Pro Washington from Boys and Girls High School declared to Syracuse, and that was the first McDonald's All-American they had, and Michael Brown from Dunbar came the following year, and it just I was in high school at the time, and I used to go play pickup ball. I'd take a Central bus from FM High School after school, and I'd ride it down to Teal Avenue. I'd go up to the parks at Sunnycrest, and a lot of the Syracuse players would play there. Pro Washington would be there, Raphael Addison, and it was an unbelievable game on the blacktops. And my dad would pick me up after work on the way home, and I did that for most of the spring and the summer, and that's where my love for basketball was. Hey, I could compete with these guys, and I had a growth spurt, and that's where my love for the game began.
Oh man, those are some great names right there, brother.
Yeah.
Woo! So well, I can see, you playing with guys like that that's ultimately going to Syracuse. So I can see why you chose to go to Syracuse, especially being from upstate New York. But in '89, the '89-90 season, you transferred to University of Maryland. What was the thinking behind that? Why did you transfer, and why did you choose University of Maryland as the school to come to?
Interesting story. I was never a top 100 recruit at Syracuse. So when I came in, this was before the Fab Five. That was probably one of the greatest classes ever at Michigan. But, our recruiting class coming in '86 was Derek Coleman was ranked 3rd in the country. Stevie Thompson was another McDonald's All-American. He was top 20. Earl Duncan, my roommate from Mater Dei High School, was the first casualty of Prop 48. He, to a man, Sherman Douglas was probably going to leave that year. that we went all the way to the national championship game and lost to Indiana because Earl was a prop 48. He didn't get his required SAT, ACT score. So he was a top 30 kid. And then we had a kid named Keith Hughes out of Carteret, New Jersey, who transferred to Rutgers and was picked by the Cavs and ended up playing a little bit in the NBA in Europe. So our class was, four top 50 guys and me. I was kind of a throw-in, and they needed a shooter in that class. So I didn't play my freshman year. My sophomore year, I beat out Earl at the shooting guard, so I started my sophomore, junior year. And back then that unfortunately no one really went pro early, right? You stayed all 4 years. Derek Coleman stayed all 4 years. Pro Washington left after 3 years at Syracuse, but our team was stacked. So like when I go and I Google Maryland on our team, it's you have an NBA logo next to yourself playing 11 years. Cedric Lewis has an NBA logo. He played a little bit with the Washington Bullets, which are now the Wizards, and Evers Burns has a logo next to his name. If you go back and look at my team at Syracuse, my last year in =89, we have six NBA logos. I'm the only one without it in the top 7. So you have Coleman, Billy Owens, Stevie Thompson. You have David Johnson, who came off our bench, Sherman Douglas, and you have a guy named Richard Manning. So stacked team, I was averaging 10 a game, shooting, spot up shooter, kind of a 3-and-D guy, I guess you'd say in the NBA today. Right. And I looked at teams and my visits, these are crazy stories. And I almost didn't come to Maryland because Gary hadn't gotten the job yet. So my first visit when I left Cuse was out to Northwestern, and Bill Foster was a coach and said, listen, I don't see you as a 2-guard. I have a guy named Rex Walters coming in as a McDonald's All-American. I'm going to play the 3. And I looked at the 3s, and the Big Ten back then was Glenn Rice and Nick Anderson and Marcus Liberty. And my defense. Well, I couldn't have guarded those guys. You and I were more of let's get out in a fast break and score some points.
Let's get these buckets, Matt.
Gotta get the buckets, right? My second visit, Walt, was with Rick Pitino at Kentucky. He just got the job. And he came in there and, I love Rick. He used to be an assistant at Syracuse, but you could kind of tell he's a used car salesman. He told me he's going to live in, Kentucky the rest of his life. He's going to own horses, which we know that never ended up being true. But they're on probation. So I decided, I don't want to go there. No one's going to see me on TV. You can't go in the NCAA tournament. So my third and most interesting visit was to Loyola Marymount. And my host at the time, I went to see the Batman movie. And one of the nicest guys you could ever meet was the late Hank Gathers. Yeah. And he died that year, passed out, passed away on the court. He was my host. And to me, that was just too far of a visit, too far away from my family, just a different lifestyle out there in LA. That living out in Sacramento, it was different. It wasn't East Coast.
Absolutely.
So my fourth visit was Rutgers, and I didn't want it to be Syracuse to the east with Keith and Earl there. So I picked Maryland. Really, Gary got the job late. My dad and I did total intel on teams. I mean, you look at the lineup. What I didn't realize is I see you at 6'8". I see Cedric Lewis at 6'9". You have Gerard Mustaf at 6'10". That knew nothing about at the time. Kevin McClinton coming as a freshman, knew nothing about Vince Broadnex, knew nothing about Jesse Edwards, Tiana McCoy really. But my dad and I liked the fact that we had a lot of bigs. Yeah. And when I went down there for my visit, my sister Amber went there and loved the campus, loved the jersey behind him, Len Bias. And he grew up, a Celtics fan. And he was, to me, Michael Jordan 2.0, if there was ever going to be one. And when I got down to Maryland, I'll never forget the pickup games and calling my dad and saying, there's a guy down here named Walt Williams that is better than Billy Owens, but he plays point guard. And my dad was like, well, I thought he was like a small forward, power forward. I'm like, no, we looked at the rosters wrong. He's a point guard. So we could get in depth in this, but the pickup games at Cole were just
unbelievable, man.
Phenomenal. So that's a lot of the draw was you, Cedric. Gerard went up going pro because of probation, and it's unfortunate. I give you all the credit in the world staying there and reviving the program. Gary told me, Matt, you can leave, pick a third school. Right. And I didn't want to. I liked you guys. I liked the team. And I didn't want to be that guy who left for 3 schools in 5 years. And, I just felt right at home at Maryland.
Yeah, it was certainly a brotherhood, man. We were definitely close-knit, hanging with each other off the court just as much. So that was great. I know. So Matt, what was your mindset, transferring and coming into Maryland? Just like you say, you had a host of guys. I mean, that's, in your college career, you played with like 10 pros, man. That's just unbelievable. Yeah. So what was your mindset coming in? Because I know I had seen you play, so I knew you had that heat from the outside. I knew it was going to be something else. But also, in my mind, I was thinking to myself, oh, Matt thinking he's going to come in here and he's going to be the man here. I have to show him what I have in my skill box, you know. And so those first few days was my mindset was I'm gonna show Matt, what I got in my toolbox, so he understands what I have when it comes game time. And going through those days of practices, man, you were unbelievable, man. And so it gave me a lot of confidence coming into games that I had a guy with me at that size that can shoot the ball the way you did just from anywhere, man. So those practices gave me a lot of confidence coming into the game. So what was your mindset though when you transferred in?
It is, and you nailed it on the head. Is it, basketball is in life. It's an alpha dog. I have two dogs. One's a pit bull, and he's the alpha dog, and the other one who's, just a mixed kind of, a helping hound kind of dog that we got as a rescue. He kind of cowers to that. I came in there thinking, to make the NBA, and this, you have to put up numbers. You as a guard, averaging 10 at Syracuse. When I moved back here, people said, "Oh, you cost us the national championship. We didn't have a shooting threat." But when you go into in Maryland, I thought, okay, I could come in here and score 17 to 20. The thing I didn't know was how great of a team and talented this team was, how great you were. Unfortunately, with you breaking your leg, and we always talk about this, I only got to play 10, 11 games with you. But I would have loved to have seen that backcourt we talk about all the time, the NCAA tall guards. We would have really rolled, but it was hard for me because the redshirt year is really tough sitting out. It's different. This with your son Kamari, he goes from BC to Miami, Ohio. He gets to play right away. I tried to look at my redshirt years, get stronger, get faster, but I lost my my rhythm a little bit. I looking back, I changed my shot. I went from a 48% shooter where I'm usually left alone a lot to maybe shooting low 30s at Maryland, but I was asked to do a lot more. When you went out with your leg injury, Kevin was a great, Kevin's a football playing, McClinton is a football playing, point guard who, is strong, kind of that Nate McMillan type, could defend, and just ran through a brick wall. All we did for Gary, but he needed sometimes help to bring it up. And, losing Tian McCoy to Texas, a lot of times I'm bringing it up and getting hounded by the other team's best player instead of me being a second, third guy on the scout behind you. Now I'm the primary target when we go to Duke or Carolina and they're saying, hey, let's jam him up and not let him shoot. And that kind of hurt at times, but it helped me in Europe develop a scorer's mentality where it was more off the bounce. I don't, kids today, they lose the mid-range game, but I learned really how to score and get to the free throw line in Europe, averaging, 25, 26 a game over there, which helped me.
You know what, Matt? I remember, so I stayed in Washington Hall in 1103D, and my window was on that alley side that separated my dorm from your dorm. And I remember just about every night hearing the basketball come through there, like you were an absolute gym rat, man. You would go back to the gym late at night to the point where I remember my man Buck, the manager, he was like, we have to give Matt a key. Give him his own key. He just constantly calling us to meet him up at the gym, man. So you worked on your game religiously. Were you always like that as a kid? Working like that?
Not really, but the summer of my freshman year, and I'm going through this with my daughter right now, right? You may not be able to relate to this because you were always kind of the guy, but when I was at Syracuse, well, I was the 12th man on the team. My freshman year, I had to fight to get into practices. Like I was a scrub. I hate to say that. Like I was full scholarship, but I was a 12th man. We had guards, Greg Monroe, Stevie Thompson, Sherman Douglas. I mean, it was a loaded Howie Trish. It was a loaded team at the guard and wing spot. So I was almost embarrassed, playing on that team. And, really like, how teams have top 10 and then the fifth team's usually like 3-4 walk-ons and a couple scholarship guys. I was always on that third team. Like I was on the extra scout team. Like I could barely get into practice. So the summer going into my sophomore year, I basically connected with a guy named Leo Routens he was drafted by the 76ers, played with Barkley. He was a Minnesota transfer to Syracuse. And at the time, he'd been cut by the NBA, and he was playing over in Malaga, Spain, and Italy, and places like that. And he was one of those guys. He taught me more work ethic. He said, "Listen, you are gonna. I watch you pick up games at the Dome. You're gonna either continue getting punked and be the 12th man, and everyone's gonna laugh at you. You're gonna have to get some heart, and what's gonna do it for you is getting in the gym and work out." And so I would get up in the morning and run and lift with him. We go get like 300, 400 shots outside, or at a gym called Most Holy Rosary, which we had a key to. And then I go back and get lunch, and we go back and play one-on-one full court, one-on-one half court for 2 hours. And at night I go play with the Syracuse guys. So I was getting in 2 workouts before they got into 1. And I just thought that was my meal ticket. If I was going to, make the NBA, and I think both of us say it. I mean, listen, you got 11 years, and you probably would have played 20 years if the NBA was the way it is today with no contact and the emphasis on the three ball. Right? 20 years, right? And everyone always tells me you're in the wrong era, because that's one thing I knew I could do with my gym reps. It's all confidence, man. You just got to get in the gym and work.
Yeah, man, for sure, man. And that's what it was all about, that work, that camaraderie as a team, man. So that brings me to my question, the Terp team that's currently the current Terp team. What is your take on the current situation with University of Maryland and things they're going through right now?
Well, you're more on the pulse. I love, you doing your reporting. I used to, live here in Syracuse, New York now, and did it. And I love how you're involved with the game. It keeps us young. We're amazed, right, at how well these teams travel and the gear. And, we used to take commercial flights. They get to, Syracuse has their own private jet. It's insane. But overall, I mean, our allegiance has always been, you had to go through, you played for Bob Wade. I hear the stories. Would have loved to have played for that guy, probably not the practices, but, he's all about, us against them mentality. Yeah. Let's have pride. We're going to outwork people. Gary was the same way. Listen, we got hit with probation. It was us against the world. I didn't know Mark Turgeon that well. Never played against Danny Manning. But, I know this. You got to be politically correct. They need some Maryland people in there. They need former players, coaches on that staff. That's what Carolina does. That's what Duke does. It's not like we were the stepchilds of the ACC, now the Big Ten. I mean, we were always a top 3, 4, 5 team, and there's no reason why we can't do that. It's a hotbed, the DMV of recruiting in the country. All great players. Listen, when I tell people from New York, they say, "Well, would you grow up playing in New York City?" No, I'm 5 hours from New York City, but the DMV in Baltimore, Maryland, and DC, even Northern Virginia. These are
ballers,
some greatest pickup. And I didn't know the game. Listen, when I came to Maryland, I'll be honest, I didn't know about go-go music. I didn't know about high socks. I didn't know about the crossover dribbles. Just the way the game is played down there is just respect, but it's just people play hard. It's a blue collar. There's no LA softness. There's no, they're not going to beat you up. They're just going to play hard. They're going to get your gym shorts and you're going to try to defend your turf. And that was always the way our pickup games were at Cole. And I feel bad for fans of Maryland. It's just, I've been to the Xfinity Center. I don't get the great vibe there unless they're playing, Duke or Carolina. Cole to me was the best. Packed environment, loud.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if it's like that, Walt, because I only see we come down for alumni games that like us playing Bucknell or, Wake Forest. I don't see the big games, but I just see on TV, I don't see the crowd and the enthusiasm for it.
Well, I tell you what, whoever is in charge of the putting on the show throughout the game, man, I mean, they are incredible. The spectacle that goes around the game is just unreal. What's happening during timeouts and, stuff like that. It's just a whole nother level. I would have loved to play in that kind of environment, but also you make a great point. I remember playing in games and just seeing a host of players in the stands and just, just feeling like it was all a culture, a family, so yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. So let's turn the road a little bit. What do you have going on now, man? What is Matt Roe up to these days?
I'm not as busy as you with plans and stuff and the reporting. When I got out of that probably about 8 years ago, when my kids were young, and my wife sent me a video of my son. He's 5 years old playing at the downtown Y here in Syracuse, and I'm like, I'm not going to miss any more games. But I've been I kind of, got into financial services when I coached at Fairfield for 4 or 5 years with Tim O'Toole. So I kind of saw that side of it. And, I love coaching those guys. We on our thread, we have, Dwayne Simpkins. I give him more respect than anyone. George Mason, he, that job is 24/7, 365 days. There's no off time. Well,
Yeah.
if you're not in season, you got camps, you're out recruiting. I like that part of it, but when you get a family, it was tough. It's just so many people trying to move up to that next level. So I got out of that and I got my securities licenses, and I started working for a company called GGT. It was an equity desk in Greenwich, Connecticut, and then moved back to Syracuse more for just, a safe place to raise a family, low cost of living, high taxes, but just comfortable. And I grew up here, and my kids, ended up going to the same schools I went to: grammar school, middle school, high school. And I became a State Farm agent after a financial advisor at HSBC Bank probably about 16 years ago. So I have my own office in Eastwood near the park I grew up playing in Sunnycrest, in the city of Syracuse. And, I've been married for close to 19 years. I have my daughter is a freshman at Niagara, going through the same growing pains.
Moving, yeah.
Going through the same growing pains I did. Well,
I know they can shoot it over there.
yeah, but she's like the 11th, 12th man like me and thinks she's the best shooter on the team and just wait for a chance. Which I love the confidence, right? If you don't think you're the best shooter on the team, don't come out, don't play.
That's it.
And then my son is a junior. He's 6'8". He is at my high school. And luckily, yesterday, time is everything. He's grown into his body. He plays center in high school, but I think he's a 3-4 in college. Mm-hmm. And he just got offered yesterday, his first offer by Radford University down in Roanoke.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Very happy for him.
Great times, man.
This probably with Kamari. Once one comes in, I hope. I'm not saying I think Radford is going to be a great spot for him. Could be, but I think once one team comes in, you get a little more interest. But he'll pick and choose. He wants to go south. He wants to be in the south. So we're very happy for him. And he has a big game tonight against a local rival, and a pink out game for cancer. So staying busy with my kids and my wife and my 2 dogs.
Yeah, and you know what? I always got a kick out of just anybody who had that interest, man. It was just wild for me to just see people wanting my son to play for him. It was just great always watching them growing up, all of my kids playing whatever sports they were involved in. And so it's always a joy to do that, man. So I'm feeling you. I'm with you 100% there. So Matt, last question for you, man. You know how we end this.
Yes.
Tell the viewers something about yourself that we do not know already, my man.
Okay. So all of us have a skill, right, that we think that we're the best at, right? I mean, with you, I mean, this is a life skill. You've always been a guy that, on our thread, the Garfield Smith startup is always pumping people up and telling them how great they are. Our guys on our team, you'd never talk about their weaknesses, but if you played somebody else that you knew growing up, you're like, that guy stinks, we're going to kick the butt. You always get confidence. That's what you did. But I'm sure there's a skill now that you have in life. I don't know, maybe you share it with us after, but you see a pool table behind me, but that's not it. I have a ping pong table in my basement where I literally, Walt, thought I was the greatest ping pong player. When I was a kid at a camp called Golden Valley, there was over 400 campers, and they did what's called the King Kong of ping pong, where every camper, a single elimination throughout the week, would play each other, and the best camper would play the best counselor. And at 2 years in a row at that camp, I was the best camper in ping pong out of 400 or 500 kids.
Wow.
All game to 11, not to 21 like they normally play. And both years in a row, kind of pissed a little bit. I lost to the counselor because he didn't have to go through the players bracket. So I get to Maryland, and how we do, our one-on-ones and workouts. And, in our gym, we'd have Michael Adams and Manute Bol. And one of the mainstays in those pickup games was Keith Gatlin. So Keith was a point guard before you, under Lefty Driesell, and an unbelievable guy. And this, when we play pickup, Keith usually wins all the games. You get on Keith's team, no matter, he could have 4 walk-ons and somehow he'd find a way to win a game and talk trash.
Yeah.
So one day I'm shooting with Keith in the auxiliary gym, and I'm like, I was talking about ping pong and how I grew up playing tennis. And I was like, Keith, I've never been beaten in ping pong except 2 counselors, at Golden Valley. No one can beat me. He looks at me. He's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, I'm the greatest ping pong player ever." I'm like, "I'm gonna wipe your butt. There's no way. Let's get a table." We went to a rec center about a week later and got on a table. And I got to tell you, the first game I did lose. It was like 21-17. And then I kept, because I'm so competitive, I kept playing him, and he beat me probably 5 games in a row, and I couldn't score over 9 points. Here's why. Keith was like, he was like ambidextrous, and he figured out my smash. So every time I'd smash to his forehand, he could just reach out. And then when I tried to cross him to his backhand, he just switched the paddle. It was like playing Forrest Gump in the movie. Like he was a human Walt. And he would just look at me. You know how he laughs? And he just laughed at me. He's like, "That's
yes, sir.
You can't get by me. You can't get by me." 5 games in a row.
Oh, wow.
So now I play with my son every night. And every time I play, it's like, Rocky, I'm trying to train to someday play Keith Gatlin at high point, just go down and kick his butt in ping pong.
All right, the ping pong master, semi ping pong master.
So what's your skill that you have that no one can beat you at?
Oh man, I have a lot of different skills, man. So it's all over the map, man. So maybe we'll do a show on that. I got a lot of different skills, man. I could break to the surface. So that's for another show, man. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining me today, man. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure, especially being able to talk with you every day on the group line that we have, man. It's such a brotherhood, and I appreciate that so much. And so, once again, thank you for joining us today, brother.
Walt, love you, and thank you for being a leader of all us guys and keeping us all together. And I can't wait to see you in person.
To host a fan show or appear as a fan on a fan show, create a profile in Fan Media Network. Then look for the news page in our website and fan show resources page. Help yourself. We give show hosts a show graphic and team colors, a simple short show format, tips on pre- and post-production, ideas to get fans and guests on your show, Apple News distribution and show sponsorship sales and services to help featured show hosts earn money. Show hosts use our iPhone app to publish their shows. Our website supports Android users.